Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. I think for most of you it's still Sunday, maybe everybody. Hey, if you could give me the thumbs up, let me know that you can hear everything okay and that the sync is okay. I've been testing it. I'm going to test it again right now. Give me the thumbs up, let me know that you can hear everything okay. Looks like it's okay. Looks like the sync is fine on my side. Let me say hi to folks and then we'll get going. Beautiful day, so I'm not going to waste it. I don't mean wasting it with you, I mean indoors. So let's see. Hello, Matt. Good to see you as always. Yes, I am doing fine. Hello, Mark Davich. Help me pronounce that, that'd be good. Hello, Mark Siebes. Good to see you. Yeah, Dickey Betts signed me up. I think two of you said that. Awesome. Garrett, hello. TBA, hello. Frank, hello, and good morning to you. Robbie Love, hello. Awesome. Matt can hear. Looks like it's good. All right, it's in sync. Or in stink or whatever, as we used to call the band, in stink. Edmund Wu, hello to you. Dan McGee, good morning. Got your email. Wednesday's probably going to work at that time, but let me check for sure. Dan McGee. Bertrand, hello. Hello. Tilde, also. All right. Chilling it. Good morning. All right. So today we're going to talk about a little bit of Dickey Betts. We're going to talk about the hexatonic scales. You know me, I'm not a scales person. But we're going to talk about adding one note. Hexatonic means six. Hex means six. Also the witch's spell, but we're not going to talk about that. It means six, and so instead of pentatonic, we're going to go to hexatonic. We're going to add a note. Now we'll do it in the major pentatonic, and we'll do it in the minor pentatonic as well. All right. So let's see if I can angle this and not make everything go nuts. Okay. So let's do this in. For practical purposes, I'm gonna do it in the key of E, which is the key of blue sky, and we'll demo it in that. We'll start out with the major pentatonic because I think the major pentatonic was what Dickey was used to. Or what the Allman Brothers are mostly associated with, although of course they played a lot more than that. So we'll take that. So if we're going to take that, we're going to start out, let me just start out here in the 9th position. So this is an E right here on the 6th string 12th fret, and as well as on the 1st string 12th fret. We'd go like this. Here's the pentatonic. And of course, there's various places that you can play that. You can play it in all sorts of different places. Right, all over the neck. So anyway, you can do that, and all that's wonderful and all that. The major hexatonic is going to add one note. In the pentatonic, we're missing from the major scale. We're missing the 7th. And we're missing the 4th. So the hexatonic is going to add the 4th to it. And what we'll see is all we're really doing is we're adding a chord tone. So that's one of the reasons why I think we're going to come full circle and to say, hey, instead of memorizing a scale, what you can do is just say, just emphasize that one note. It's just going to add a particular note. In this case, the A. So if we're going to play Blue Sky, and I'll see if I can do that, at least play the chords. So that's just an E to an A. So what the proposal here is, instead of using if we look at the pentatonic scale for E, and we look at the notes, we have E, okay, we have F sharp, we have G sharp, we have B, and let's see, we have C sharp, and then we're back to E. Now notice there's no A in there, so if we add the fourth, it turns out that the fourth is an A. So we're adding the A. And so really, if you think about it, all we're really doing is we're adding the chord tone to that 4 chord when we go to it. So that's all we're doing in this hexatonic. And I'll show you the difference. So what I want to do is I want to demo a little bit. I'm going to demo a little bit to a blue sky, and we'll give that a shot. We'll give that a shot. So the first time through, so let me just play the scale over it first time, okay? So let me just do that, and I'll kind of lower this so we can see. E, A. Okay, now we'll just play the scale over it, okay? So this is the normal pentatonic. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that was the normal pentatonic scale. Now this time I'm going to add that A, and you're going to hear the difference. Okay? Okay, so you can hear that that A really adds quite a bit to it. I agree, Christine. It's a really uplifting sound on that that you can get there. So, let me just solo and show you the difference between, say, a major pentatonic and that hexatonic. So let me try and play the solo. So first time through is going to be major pentatonic, and there's nothing that's going to sound bad in it. Well, unless I make bad notes. I certainly do that from time to time. Pretty often. I'll play a sour note or two, but I'll try not to. And I'll just try and use the major pentatonic on this one. Okay? And then what I'll do is the next time through I'll add in the hexatonic. I'll add in that one little note. Here we go, major pentatonic. Okay, so, you know, the notes are fine, but did you notice it doesn't really feel like it's going anywhere? It really kind of, and maybe that's partly my playing, of course, but there's parts that aren't going anywhere. Now, I messed up a couple times and played that A note. I don't know if some of you, I'm sure, heard that. Um, so I messed up a couple of times and played that A note, and you can hear the real difference. So anyway, let me try now adding in. I'll add in the hexatonic note, and we'll see how that goes. So it definitely adds quite a bit of character into that, I think, just by adding that one note. And it really is, the key thing is because it's such a strong chord tone, right? It's the root of the chord that you're going to in a lot of these things, 1 to 4. So I think that's, you know, one of the reasons why it worked so well. Let me, yeah, thanks. Let's see. So let me stop in just a second and see if I can answer any questions, because I think it's actually pretty simple, and you can think of it from a perspective of adding a note to the pentatonics, to the major pentatonic scale, in which case you're adding the fourth, or you can think of it as just following a chord tone as you go to that A chord, and that's the way I prefer to think about it. But either way, it's okay. And you'll notice, I think, that a lot of the things become richer. So just take something simple like this. Now, this is actually somewhat more like a Dwayne lick than a Dickey lick, but than Dickey Betts lick. I've got to be careful on that one. So anyway, this one right here. Okay, so that right there, I'm simply pulling off, and that's just an E arpeggio. But when you put in that A, which is really that right there, that A is the hexatonic note. You get Duane Allman's Ode to Joy lick, or whatever you want to call it there. And it just makes it a little bit more rich. And I think that's pretty cool. There we go. All right. So anyway, I wanted to just talk through that. Let's see. It looks like Frank has not had a good connection, which is too bad. So if you're struggling with this, and if you still don't have one scale under your belt, I would recommend not learning a different scale and just kind of focusing on trying to play a note that's in a chord. The more you can start to do that, the better. So now for me, it's kind of hard to not play simply a major scale and to play that. So instead of, the only thing missing now from that hexatonic in the major scale and the E major scale is the seventh. So a lot of times I'll simply play modally on that one, and I'll put in the seventh note. But that note right there is not quite as uplifting, and it's not really a chord tone. That D sharp isn't a chord tone in A, so it doesn't work, and it's not a chord tone in E, so it doesn't work anywhere near the same, doesn't have anywhere near the same power that the other note has. All right, see if we've got any questions. Even though they were both playing the hexatonic scale, Dwayne's solo is quite different sounding than Dickey's. Yeah, absolutely. You know, that's yeah, Joy to the World lick. I don't know. Some people call it differently. Yeah, Joy to the World, Ode to Joy. I don't know. I've heard them both. Steve Douglas, hello. And Christine Vick, great to have you on. Guitar CAG. A is part of the Ionian mode, so that's why it works over the E chord over A. Yeah, it's true. You can say it's the Ionian mode. If you're playing a 1 chord and a 4 chord, you can play the Ionian mode over that. But as we just kind of talked about, the Ionian mode also includes that D sharp, and that's not a very strong note over that. So if you just kind of play the Ionian mode, it'll work, but again, it's going to sound that, you know, that note right there is just not a very strong note over those chords. So watch it. All right. Can you bend into the A note? Of course you can bend into it, Robbie, and it sounds great. Always going to sound good. Bending the chord tones, really good stuff. So yeah, so now we'll talk about the minor hexatonic in just a second, because the Allmans, you could say they use the minor hexatonic as well. But again, I like thinking of these as tones, as where they fall on the scale. I think that's often more helpful. But we'll talk. Yeah, so that's so Geert says that, I find it helpful when you talk about X scale being Y scale with an added subtracted note. Yeah, so that's helpful. So if you can think of it either as the E major scale, which is the E Ionian mode, as I think Guitar CAG was pointing out, and you can think of it as the Ionian mode with the 7th taken out of it. So here's the Ionian mode, or here's the E major scale. Let's not talk modes. Let's just talk major scales. Here's the E major scale. And we're going to take out this note. So it now sounds like. So that's one way of thinking about it. The other way is thinking of it as the E major pentatonic with an added 4th. So instead of, we have, it's this note right here. That's the key note. And you can hear it also makes it flow nicely. And I think probably that's one of the reasons why they played it so much, because there's so many. There's so many nice flowing lines that kind of come. It's very guitaristic, I think. Very guitar friendly. All right, so TBA is asking about the minor hex. So we will talk about the minor hex for just a moment. So the minor hexatonic, I think, is probably best for adding. Well, let's talk about it. Yeah, so actually, before we go on, yeah, Melissa does a lot. Blue Sky does a lot. Uses the major hexatonic. Jessica uses it as well. So I think a lot of that is why it's called the Dickey Betts scale. All right, let's move on to the minor hexatonic. Now, the minor hexatonic, let's take A now for an example. Everybody's favorite key. So if we take the A minor pentatonic, everybody knows the A minor pentatonic in this sort of A with the 6th, with the root on the 6th position, right? That's an A. So if we look at that, we have. All right, that's every guitar player's favorite scale, and it's good, with good reason, because it sounds so good. Sounds so good. So for this, however, we have, if we look at the minor scale, we have the 1, the 3, the 4, the 5, and the 7. So the notes that are missing if we're going to play the minor scale would be the 2 and the 6. So we're missing this one, the 2nd, and we're missing the 6th. Now, the 2 can also be thought of as the 9th, right? Because it's just 1 fret above the root. So generally speaking, when we play it down low, we call it the 2. When we play it up top, we call it the 9th. That's just kind of a nomenclature. But we can think of it. We can think of it in terms of. We can think of it in terms of playing of adding the 2 and the 6th to get the minor scale, right? Or if you prefer the Aeolian mode. Again, I don't usually use that nomenclature. I just call it the minor scale. Okay, so let's see. So what the minor hexatonic does is it adds the 9th or the 2nd. So the minor hexatonic is going to sound like this. Instead of this, we're going to play this. So it's this note right here. Think about it over this A minor chord. So that's a really nice. The minor hexatonic scale has that 9th added to it, and you hear that in a lot of stuff. You hear that, for example, in a bunch of Allman stuff as well. But you can also hear it in Eric Johnson will use it, David Gilmour, Mark Knopfler. It's actually more common because I think minor pentatonic is a little more common in rock, certainly in classic rock. Okay, so I see a couple people say, TBA says A is the people's key, contrary to Sean Daniel. Yeah, it's definitely the people's, the guitarist's key, for sure. I think Sean was using G. One of the reasons he likes to use G is because you can go from G to G rather comfortably on a single string, and you don't have to change your orientation. Whereas in a lot of keys, you kind of have to shift to the 5th string, if you're starting on the 6th. Anyway, that's just my guess. Okay, yeah, and you're right. It is Santana-esque for a slightly different reason. All right, so we're going to try and, yeah, that's right. That's right, Guitar Cat, in memory of Elizabeth Reed. It's in there. It's definitely in there. Hey, Thomas V, good to see you on. And Nemo Unknown, hello to you. And Gregory Shoemate. Oh, taking out which note of Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do? Well, the 2nd, which is Re, is out of a minor pentatonic scale, and the 6th, which would be T, right? So you're taking out the Re and the T, and then in the minor hexatonic, you add back in the Re. How's that? Did that help? I'm guessing for most people it didn't. So let me demo this. I'm going to demo something using only a minor pentatonic. One of the beauties of the minor pentatonic is that it works so well over lots of different things. And I'm going to show you over this chord progression. And this is kind of a Skinner-esque chord progression, but it's kind of good. Let's see if this works. All right. Okay, so first time through, I'm going to try and just use the minor pentatonic, and then we'll use the hexatonic to show you what happens there. All right. more time, minor pentatonic. One more time. That was terrible. Here we go. All right, so that's the minor pentatonic. Let's go into the. Let's try and use the hexatonic. So what I'm going to try and do on this time, and I'm probably going to overdo it, but I'm going to try and add in this ninth or the second, which is a B. Okay, now notice it's not in the minor pentatonic, so we're going to add that sound into it. I'm going to try and do it anyway. Do my best. Here we go. One more time. Try it one more time up here. Okay, let's see what's going on here. It looks like the feed keeps slowing and screwing up. So, yeah, let's see if we can get it back a little bit. Hopefully it's not too bad. Feed can't keep up with the player. Let's see. Okay. Hold on just a second. Oh yeah, it looks like all of a sudden the stream just dropped out. I don't know if somebody was, if I lost bandwidth or what. Is it okay now? YouTube doesn't really help much. Okay, good. Thanks. I'm not going to try and adjust it. Okay, so did you hear the difference on that second one? And again, it's really hard for me to not play modally if I'm going to play that B note. But it's really a nice note to emphasize. That note right there. It's kind of nice. So yeah, I mean, you hear it all over the Allman Brothers playing. You hear it in Miles Davis. I think Dwayne was really influenced by Miles Davis, among other people. But yeah, it's kind of a cool thing. I really like it. I like to emphasize the ninth when I'm playing, especially minor blues. I think it adds a lot into it. Now, if we're going to break apart or break down the, hold on just a second. Okay, yeah, if we're going to break down the song itself, now the song itself is kind of interesting, and so let me do the chord progression here. So it's basically an A minor chord progression. It starts out with A minor to a C to a G, and now something a little bit different. It goes to D. And then the F to B to G to A. So what's different is this D. And actually, that's a note that's out of the key. If you think about it, if we're playing an A minor, we have a D minor that would normally fit into that key. And you can see by playing the scale, actually. All right, so that's the A minor scale there. And we'll notice that it has an F. Well, the D chord, not D minor, D has a F sharp. It's D, D, F sharp, and A. Whereas D minor is D, F, and A. So you notice that in the minor pentatonic, you just ignore it completely. And that's the beauty of leaving out the seventh. Or, I'm sorry, of leaving out that... leaving out the sixth, is that you can ignore that one. But if you want to put it in, then you have to take into account that particular chord. Now, I'll demo that, and I'll show you that there's some neat little things that you can do with that as well as just adding in that hexatonic note, which is the B. Let me show you. When we play over the D chord, I'm going to maybe emphasize that F sharp instead of the F. Okay, which is, I'm going to point out, is in not the minor pentatonic, it's not in the hexatonic, and it's not even in the Aeolian mode or the minor scale of A. It's a separate chord. It's a chord that doesn't fit into the scale. And that's one of the reasons why I think, again, it's helpful to think about the chords that you play over, not just the scales that are going on. Now, yes, if you're a modal player, you can say, well, over that D chord, I'm going to play an A Dorian or something like that. Somebody mentioned that it sounded Carlos Santana. There you go, right there. But in any event, I'm just going to emphasize that F sharp. I'm going to give it a shot. Let's see how it goes. I'll just play it up here. One more time. We'll try it up here. Okay, so you see there's lots of different ways that you can approach this, and to me, super nice in terms of, it's one of the things that just makes guitar so much fun. You can approach a particular chord progression from different levels, or from different angles, and a lot of them sound good, and a lot of them sound really good. So, yeah, anyway, it is what it is. It is what it is. All right, so, you can think about it from a chord perspective, you can think about it modally, you can think about it from a pentatonic perspective. the strength of the pentatonics is exactly their weakness. The strength is that they ignore, because you're missing either on the minor. When you on the minor, you take out the second and sixth. You take out a lot of the flavor notes that composers use to really make a difference in their compositions. And so when you play the pentatonic, you don't hit those notes, which is kind of interesting, or can make the sort of a solo that doesn't really have a lot of character. On the other hand, it helps you avoid really bad notes. So pentatonics are good that way. I probably shouldn't tell everybody about this, but you know me enough by now. I worry less about hitting bad notes, and I try my best to hit the character of the song. And I make a lot of mistakes because of that, but I prefer to be that sort of player than a safe player. But pentatonics are that way for sure. That's a big strength of them, and you can play a lot with that. All right, so there's lots of different ways that you can add it. If you're really comfortable with pentatonics, you can say, okay, I can add this hexatonic note either in the minor, which is the ninth, or in the major, which is the fourth. All right, cool. Cool. All right. Yeah, I agree. So Geert says, I find it difficult to mentally add or omit notes. I think it comes from a lack of learning scales and chord tones in all positions. I don't know. I think the main thing, Geert, is to get your ears trained to hear those things. That's the most important breakthrough that you can make. To constantly go back to the fretboard, you become a hand player and not a head or heart player. And do yourself a favor and try and get the sound rather than the remember in which position do I add this note. Now, having said that, you probably have to do a little bit of that. I mean, like I said, the thing about the major hexatonic is it's a very guitar-friendly thing. So I think when you get that sound that's into your head, that's the thing when you can really get it. Let me turn this down a bit. It's too loud. You know, that kind of thing is there. And by the way, I mean, I still work out these things too. When I try a new sound or whatever, I can't just play the scale. You know, diminished is a perfect example of that. If you don't have the sound in your head, it's just going to come out wrong. So, you know, you can have a scale that you play. But that's just an exercise, right? So I went for years when I came to a diminished chord, I just play. And I guess that's okay, but it's really not much of anything until I learned. Now, somebody was saying everybody's influenced by Miles, so here's my influence from Miles. I learned a lot of my play was imitating and trying to study Robin Ford, particularly on diminished lines. And he does this half-step, whole-step thing that he learned from playing with Miles. But it's something that you can jam over on a single chord. And it's one thing to be able to play through those things. It's another thing to really get those sounds in your ear and then get the timing so that you can make it work in a song, right? So you can help feel like, okay, this is the note that I'm going to resolve to. If I'm playing a B sharp diminished and going to a D chord from an A, you know, I have to be able to resolve that. Right? So I just resolved to a D. Let me try it again. There's my D. But it's getting the sound in there and kind of knowing a little bit about the fretboard where you're going, but it's more the sound than anything. So I would say work on your sound rather than the patterns. You probably and you probably won't believe me, but I'm looking at a display that's 30 seconds behind. So when I'm looking right at you, I'm not seeing anything on the fretboard. There's my D. There's another D. Right? Now I can't do that perfectly, but I can do it. Let's see, if that's a D, that's an F sharp, that's an A, that's my D. So I'm trying not to look at the fretboard. Anyway, that's a helpful thing. I'm playing by ear. All right. Let's see. The major scale was a huge part of training my ear. Yes. So Mark David says yes. Major scale was a huge part of training the ear. Yeah. For a lot of us it is. Playing that major scale. I think for me, learning the major scale was really a breakthrough for me. And Gary Brooks says, as long as you can resolve it, you can hit wrong notes. That is absolutely right. You can hit all the wrong notes you want as long as you resolve it. And the way you resolve it is by playing onto a chord tone. By playing onto a chord tone, you will always resolve. Always. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Well, I hear you, Garrett. But you know, most people can sing. Most people can sing on key. If you can sing on key, you can probably do it. Your ears can probably make it. Christine Vick says, has listened to Terry Kath a lot. I don't think he ever played the same lick twice. I'm guessing he probably did, but he was an amazing improviser. And you know, he wasn't using anything complicated. His scales were not complicated. So that's another thing, you know, when people say, I don't think Carlos Santana was great because all he did was use minor pentatonics, or all he did was use the Dorian mode. Yeah, I don't know. To me, that has nothing to do with it. Or, well, it has a little bit, tiny to do with it. Learning a new scale doesn't necessarily make you more creative. It's how you use that. You know, music is rhythm and melody. Harmony is the least important of those elements. And that's kind of, when we're talking about right notes and wrong notes, that's kind of what we're talking about, is harmonic training. Now, it does add a lot of color, no question about it. No question about it. But, you know, if you listen to somebody who plays really well, listen to Dickey Betts. You can remember those lines because he's playing memorable melodies. Jerry Garcia is not my favorite guitarist. I don't hate him. I don't think he's the absolute greatest though either. But he had a real facility for melodies for sure. Okay. All right. All my guitar player heroes are pretty much pentatonic players. So who are your guitar heroes there, Mr. Thomas V? Christine Vick. Pat Martino, great teaching Undiminished. Yeah, Pat Martino, is he still living? I know he was really in bad health. You know, and here's a guy, you can't, just like Tony Rice, can't afford medical care. This is how we treat our great artists. Yep. I mean, yeah. Let's see. Yes. So Mark Siebes says, I found your lesson on Charlie Christian's Six Appeal. I love that song. Yeah, there's a lot of unusual notes. And I think in that sense, you know, that's bebop players play by chord. They're playing chords to chord, and they're making lots of substitution chords, which is why, and they're playing chromatically between those, which is, I won't say that's the only way that a lot of bebop players would think back when bebop was a big thing. Whereas, like, you know, by 60s jazz, they started playing modally again, and a lot of Miles stuff was modal, and a guy like Pat Martino Pat Metheny will play mostly modally. But if you listen to the classical bebop guitar players or others, they're playing essentially arpeggios and chromatic notes between arpeggios, and they're using constant Ian Stitch. Yeah. I mean, again, if you listen to me long enough, you know that it's not like I don't know any systems, but I really shy away from telling people learn the system and that's that. because guitar and music is just so much more than learning a system. If it were just learning a system, it'd be all very boring. So, fine, learn a system. But more important is develop your ears. Listen. Listen twice as much as you play, and you're going to be better. If you can listen 4 times as much as you play, you'll be better. And when I say listen, I don't just mean listen and pop a beer and head back in the pool or whatever, but really listen. Listen to those notes and listen to the chord changes and listen to the melody that's imposed over it. Listen to what the bass player is doing. Listen to what the drummer's playing on the hi-hat. That's active listening. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Hendrix, Clapton, SRV, Richards. Yeah, so you can say that they were pentatonic players if you want. That's one view of it, Mr. Thomas V. A totally different view is to say that they were very rhythmic players. I think that would do, if you're comfortable with a pentatonic scale, that's fine. It's good to get a pentatonic scale down, right? In this case, they almost all play minor pentatonics. Hendrix had the major pentatonic stuff when he did his chordal stuff. But if you listen to Stevie, he's mostly playing minor pentatonics with some different notes, right? His that kind of stuff. He did that all the time with the ninth and the flat nine pull off. But and Page too. Yeah. Well, Page knew how to throw in some interesting notes. Page definitely knew his basic theory, his basic chordal theory. But if you think about Hendrix and Clapton, particularly Hendrix and SRV, they're very rhythmically complex players, particularly Hendrix and SRV. All of them were, but I think if you listen to the rhythm that you're playing, you can improve a lot. So I would say that. Listen to the way that they're playing notes, not so much the scales that they're playing out of. Right? So Hendrix would play that kind of stuff. You can say, oh, that's just major pentatonic, but okay, it is, but exactly how he did it is slightly different. Steve Cropper might have done that, and a Motown player might have done. It's hard for me to not play that now. So they might have played different things, or played it more stiffly, or what have you. Anyway, listen to what they did. All right, Hendrix heard Terry play and said, he's better than I am. Hendrix was a very humble person when he talked about his own guitar playing. Terry Kath was great. I'll leave it at that. It's hard for me to criticize. I don't want to criticize anybody. Terry Kath was great. Hendrix, I think, was the greatest. First buffer issue. Okay. Miles Davis said, practice your scales, then you know the rules you want to break. Juilliard student. That's what a Juilliard student told Miles, Gary Brook? Yeah. Right. Yeah, so Garrett, it's totally true. You have to establish a foundation for something. And one way to do it is to establish a learning system. That's one way to do it. And that's totally fine if you do that. And I recommend that people pick one and do that one. But then don't be lazy about it. Fine, you want to learn the pentatonic scales? Learn the notes on the fretboard. First of all, the foundation that everybody should have is learning the notes on the fretboard. Absolutely. If you learn scale patterns before you learn the notes on the fretboard, you're just being silly. You really are. Learn the notes on the fretboard. Seriously, learn that first, and learn your learn your basic bar chords if you can. You know, that's more important than any other pattern. Those are the simplest of all those patterns. If you want to add patterns onto that, then at least you're adding patterns onto a foundation that's going to hold. If you just learn the pattern, somebody changes to a different key or whatever, you know, you're lost. You really are. You really are. So anyway, learn that first. Then fine, learn a system, but then don't keep on learning different systems, right? Don't keep thinking if I just know one more pattern. At some point, you have to work things out for yourself and apply them to music. Apply them to music. Anyway, but yeah, no, I'm not anti-pattern. I just don't get in your head that you just learn a pattern and that's it. That's music, because it ain't. All right. Yeah, SRV's rhythm strumming super tough. Minor pentatonic was flat third, flat seventh, closer to Dorian, major closer to Mixolydian, where you play only flat seventh. Again, yeah, if you think of things that way, that's totally fine. That's a good way of thinking. If you are a minor pentatonic player and you want to add something in, you want to start playing Mixolydian mode, great. You can think of it that way. What notes do I add? But you're right. And in fact, if you do modal sort of playing, you learn that there are major sorts of sounding modes and minor sorts of sounding modes. And for the Dorian, for example, is a minor mode. The Mixolydian is a major mode, along with the Ionian and the Lydian. So it's often better thinking of, if you're going to talk about if you want to relate to pentatonics, and you want to relate to Mixolydian or Lydian or Ionian, you should think about the major pentatonic and say what notes are added. If you want to think about the minor modes, the Dorian, the Phrygian, and the Aeolian, we won't talk about Locrian. But if you want to talk about the Phrygian and the Dorian and the Aeolian, you can think of the minor pentatonic and what notes you add to it. That's one way. But again, if you study modes and you want to make modal playing the thing that you do, it's important to know how a mode relates. There's all sorts of different ways to think about the modes, and it's helpful to know them all, because then that's going to make your playing a lot more dynamic. I don't them all. There's at least three of them. One is, okay, if I start from a minor pentatonic, what notes do I add to get this particular mode? That's one. Another is, what major scale does this come out of? That's another one. So both of those, and there's one other one that I've never mastered, which I can't remember. So, but totally those two. All right, let's see. Yep, that's great. Yep. So I'll have two, please. Says, yep, so Mark David says, take a time set aside every day devoted to learning all 7 major scale patterns. Yeah, and, you know, that's one way of doing it. Like I said, that's one way of doing it. Okay, mindful, conscious, active doing it. I'll have two, please. Says, should I take private guitar lessons when starting out? I think so, because a teacher can help you decide where you want to go and help you visualize in a certain way. A good teacher is going to have 80 different ways of getting at a subject. So if there are people who insist, mostly I have it's a lot of adults who insist I want to learn it by doing scales and playing the right notes, as opposed to playing the notes right. And that's fine, and I'll take people there. And it certainly makes people feel better. You know, if you learn the 5 major scale positions, that's fine. You can learn the 5 shapes of those, and you feel like you're making progress a lot. It's the turning into music at some point that's really difficult for a lot of people. But there's other people who just want to learn songs, and that's great too. And there's people who want to learn modes, and that's great too. And all that. And if there's people who want to learn sweep picking and stuff like that, I don't teach them, because I'm not a metal guy. But a good teacher will help guide you in the direction that's going to work best for you, and try and help you not lose any, any real holes, put any real holes in your play. Like, for example, one thing that everybody here has noticed that I harp on all the time is you got to know the notes. So, know the notes. And sure, Lightning Hopkins probably didn't know the notes on the fretboard, but you ain't Lightning Hopkins. So that's why you learn the notes. Okay. Yeah. Otherwise, the I find that if you don't start out with a teacher, it's just overwhelming. Got a jet. Hey, AC Ferguson, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it. And Mark Sieb says, I use the what major scale does this come out of method. Yes, that's the method I used for a very, very long time. And then I fairly recently, I'd say maybe 10 years ago, added the what notes from the minor or major pentatonic are added method. And both of those together make it a little bit stronger, I find anyway. Okay. All right, Christine. Glad to have you on. All right. Let's see. Link the root notes end with the landing on the root, but instead of the root on the pattern when you are, move to the root in the next position. Then do the same thing with the 3s and 5s. Yeah. Yeah, so that's exactly what you can do. Now I happen to do it with chords, right? Because the 1s, the 3s, and the 5s are all chords. So I do it with triads. So I see triads all over. That's what I try and do now. But it took me a long time to do that. I did scale patterns for majors and minors for years and years and years. Let's see. Lightning Hopkins. He would have been a better player if he knew this. Maybe he did. I'm not harping on Lightning Hopkins. One of my faves. Knowing piano helps. Yeah, knowing piano definitely is easier for theory. It makes theory a lot easier if you play piano. I played piano for a couple of years when I was younger, and I played keys in a band for a while. So theory is a lot easier on a piano. I think Gary. I think if I could advise guitar players to learn a second instrument, and myself included, I would pick an instrument where you can't visualize. That would be my advice. So, saxophone or trumpet would be my number one. But of course, it's do as I say, not as I do, because I never did that. But you don't hear a lot of horn players who just blurt out notes, and but you hear a lot of guitar players who do. It's kind of like blah notes. I taught Paige everything, Joe Page. That's pretty funny. But Gary, there's nothing wrong with learning a second or third or fourth instrument. All good. All good. Let's see. Finn Sainty, hello. Gary Book, does a banjo count? Banjo is pretty cool. I like the banjo a lot. I haven't played banjo in a long time. Kazoo. Kazoo, yeah. Harmonica's a good one. Dwayne said you can understand how to play slide if you know harmonica. Yep, if you just play banjo and open G, play the 5-string banjo, you got a lot of stuff there. But, you can play a heck of a lot. I mean, listen to Bella Fleck on banjo. Good stuff. Alrighty. Well, thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. We will, I think I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Have a great Sunday. It's a beautiful day here. And it's a beautiful day here. Hope you get a chance to get out and I hope you like this one. Put some other suggestions for other things we can cover on live streams down below. See, I teach scales even though I'm not a scale guy. So, you know, we can do it. So, no problem. No problem. Okay. We'll see you all later, and put your like I said, put your suggestions down below. Okay, see y'all.